Welcome to Encounter Wargaming. I'm Jay, and this is Warhammer 40,000 for your girlfriend. I want to start off by clarifying that this is not just for girlfriends. As I said in the intro video to this playlist, which you can find linked at the top of the screen there, this is for anyone who has zero knowledge of the hobby that you're trying to explain this stuff to. The majority of time, this will involve a dude not being able to find the right words or the right way to tell his new girlfriend about this insanely in-depth and incredibly nerdy hobby we enjoy so much. I mean, I want to be as inclusive as possible while at the same time exploiting popular keyword searches, because that's just how an internet business works. So, without repeating everything I said in that intro video, I'm going to continue our discussion on why 40k is such an amazing hobby, with a look at the background and fiction that surrounds 40k. There has been a variety of writers and designers that have contributed to this intellectual space over many decades now. In fact, it's become such a huge monster of a mythos that it would be impossible for me to cover everything today. I'm just hoping to give you an overview in plain English, the Coles Notes version, if you will, if those are even a thing anymore. But without further ado, let's take a look at the grim darkness of the far future. The setting of Warhammer 40,000 takes place past the year 40,000 AD. In other words, roughly 38,000 years in the future, since we ourselves are just past the year 2000 in present time. Humanity in this time period occupies many worlds throughout the Milky Way galaxy. These human worlds are, for the most part, united in a galactic empire known as the Imperium of Mankind. The Imperium of Mankind is ruled by the Emperor of Mankind, naturally. The problem with this is that the Emperor is not 100% lucid, and is currently in a comatose state. In fact, he's been in a comatose state for approximately 10,000 years. How is this possible, you ask? Well, he's a being known within the universe as a perpetual. Someone who has no natural lifespan and can regenerate from some of the most fatal of wounds. Very much like an immortal, as depicted in the Highlander movies, he has lived for the majority of human history, even during our own time period right now, pulling the strings from behind the scenes and steering humanity in the right direction without really making himself publicly known. When he's had to make himself known in order to get his point across, he would take on various identities throughout history. It's hinted at that the Emperor was possibly Alexander the Great, Buddha, Jesus, King Arthur, and a whole bunch of more historical figures that represent basically the best that humanity has to offer. Back to our story though, because the Emperor remains in a state of undeath, he is only able to communicate with his followers through the use of his psychic abilities. Psychic powers are a big part of the 40k universe. It allows not only the Emperor to communicate with his people, but also allows him to project a strong psychic beacon across the galaxy, to act as a lighthouse or a North Star of sorts for human spacecraft throughout the Milky Way galaxy. This leads us to the next aspect of the Imperium of Mankind, with their way of traveling long distances through space. They travel by piercing a hole in the fabric of space itself. On the other side is a parallel dimension known as the Warp, the Imperium, or the Realm of Chaos. This dimension is a realm where the thoughts and emotions of sentient beings are made manifest. In other words, our dreams and nightmares exist in this other world. Time does not flow in this dimension as it does in real space. So by tearing a hole into the warp and then coming out a hole somewhere else in the galaxy could take place over moments, as opposed to decades or even the centuries it would take to travel from star to star, even at light speed. This is how people are basically able to travel throughout the galaxy. The problem is that this form of travel is extremely dangerous. The warp is home to not only our dreams, but also our nightmares. In a universe that is in a perpetual state of war, you can only imagine what kind of negative emotions could manifest in this other dimension. So not only does humanity have to fight a constant battle with their worst nightmares while just traveling across the galaxy, but they're also constantly at war with a number of alien races. These aliens are known collectively in-game as Xenos. There are a few major Xenos races within 40k that pose a major threat to the stability of the Imperium of mankind, so let's go over them briefly. First of these are the Orcs. Much like the Orcs of Lord of the Rings or Warcraft, except spelled with a K on the end instead of a C. Orcs are a violent race that lives to fight. They get bigger the more they fight, and right from the moment of birth, they fight even with each other. This allows them to grow to massive hulking monstrosities that would make you shit yourself if they came running at you full speed while screaming at the top of their lungs, carrying a blade that is as tall as you are. They are green in color and have no genders. They procreate by shedding fungal spores that grow into mushrooms. In time, these mushrooms will develop into one of the orcoid subspecies, since they do not just produce orcs. The orcs, like most of the races in 40k, were engineered by an ancient race that we know very little about. This race is referred to as the Old Ones. Because of this, the orcs not only produce other orcs, but can produce an entire ecosystem for themselves, just by subconsciously setting these spores. This allows them to settle in any planetary environment they may find themselves in and flourish. Orc mushrooms can grow into small goblin-type creatures that the larger orcs use as a slave race. These skinny little green beings are known to the orcs as grots or Gretchen. They are their slaves and helpers and can do quite little without an orc telling them what to do. Quite often, though, grots serve as an outlet for their orc master's anger, and as a result, they have very short life expectancies. The orc mushrooms can also grow into a variety of orc-like animals, collectively known as squigs. The word squig being the short form for a squiggly beast. They can come in all shapes and sizes and can be used for many purposes. Some are used for livestock, beasts of burden, pets. They're even used as suicide bombers on the field of battle. Whatever you may think an orc might need an animal for, there's a squig for that. The Eldari and the Drukhari. These races are pretty much the same race. They are the Warhammer 40k equivalent to elves. Not Santa's elves, though. More like Lord of the Rings elves. Except these elves have incredibly advanced technology that includes things like anti-gravity engines on their tanks, and blades so sharp that the edge is literally a molecule thick. This advanced weaponry, combined with their lightning-quick reflexes, makes them a pain in the ass for the Imperium of mankind. Especially since most humans are slow and clumsy in comparison to the average Eldari. The Eldari live on spacecrafts that are the size of planets, called craft worlds, which are made of a living material called wraith bone. This material grows as if it was alive, and is incredibly responsive to psychic commands. Every Eldari is a psyker on some level, even if it's the most basic of psychic abilities. The most powerful psykers in the entire galaxy are members of the Eldari race. This includes many notable characters within the game, such as Eldrad of Ulthwé, who is possibly the most powerful Psyker in the game. The Eldari also possess a network of interdimensional tunnels that they use to travel across the galaxy, called the Webway. This means that they don't have to travel through the warp like humans do. Because of this galactic-wide network that was gifted to them by the mysterious Old Ones, they do not have the dangers that humanity faces when traveling amongst the stars. The Eldari also have dark cousins that represent the darker side of their race, if you will. These sadistic elves are known as the Drukhari. The Drukhari live in a city that exists purely within the Webway, called Camorra. This dark city has no sunshine and is ruled by a hierarchy of warlords, crime lords, and pirates, for lack of better terminology. Living in this dimension that is neither in real space or within the warp, the Drukhari are free to indulge in their darkest of desires without the fear of being attacked by demons. This usually involves some kind of pain or torture. Basically, pain for pleasure. As I stated earlier, demons find Psykers very attractive, since every Eldari has some psychic ability, whether that ability be nurtured or suppressed, still makes them look extremely tasty to the demons of the warp. The Necrons. The Necrons are an alien race of undead robots. Yeah, you heard me. Alien undead robots. What? They are descended from an ancient race known as the Necron tier that became enslaved by another alien race called the Catan and waged war on the aforementioned Old Ones. During this time, the Catan pretended to be the Necron tier's gods in order to convince all of the Necron tier race to replace their fragile mortal bodies with those of skeletal robots, so that the Catan could feed on the life energy that was released from this act. This process is referred to as biotransference. Basically, the Necrons gave up their souls in order to live forever. It's almost cliché in a way. After this happened, their ruler, the last of the Silent Kings, found a way to overthrow their Catan masters and break the Catan into shards. Like the shards of a broken mirror, they are only a fraction of the original object, but still equally useful when trying to see a reflection. Hence, these shards are not as powerful as the original Catan, but are still a force to be reckoned with. The Necrons have many of these shards imprisoned in order to use them as destructive weapons on the battlefield. After they overthrew and imprisoned these enslavers, they decided to all go to sleep for millions of years rather than fight the newly dominant races of the Eldari and the Orcs. The Necrons built massive tomb worlds that housed millions of Necrons, and would sleep until the current 40k timeline, where they have just begun to awaken as the Imperium and other races poke around the galaxy. You gotta admit, an army of zombie robots just sounds cool for so many reasons. No? Just me? The Tyranids. You know those sci-fi movies where an army of humans goes up against an army of gigantic alien insects? Starship Troopers is probably one of the first that comes to my mind. That's basically what the Tyranids are. They consist of many varieties of gigantic alien insects. They have no feelings or remorse for their actions, since for the most part, they all share a collective hive mind. This is similar to how a queen ant controls her drones. The drones each have a purpose and instinctually will carry out the will of the hive, even when left on their own. An enemy that only wants to consume is not one you can barter peace treaties with. They show no purpose or political ideology other than to consume the entire galaxy. They infest worlds with armies of various insectoid monstrosities and overrun any intelligent species that may fight back. Once the planet is completely infested with Tyranid organisms, the hive ships consume all the organic matter on the planet, including the Tyranid life forms on the planet, as well as all of the natural resources, and they basically leave the planet a naked rock in cold space. The Tyranids use all of the genetic material they consume to create new and even deadlier forms of insectoid monsters. Once a planet is consumed, they simply move on to the next world that supports organic life. It is their ultimate goal to absorb all of the organic material in the entire galaxy and then move on, since judging by the angles they appear to be attacking the galaxy from, it would be safe to assume that they're not from this galaxy at all. Alien insects from another galaxy. Bomb. The Tau. The Tau are the youngest of all the alien races in 40k, and are technically the only sort of good guys. Although, I suppose that's completely subjective. They are extremely technologically and socially advanced in spite of the fact that they are a young race. They occupy a small empire on the outskirts of the galaxy where every citizen has a purpose and everyone is provided for. The Tau is not only the name of their race, but also their philosophy. It is the belief that everything they do is for the greater good of all. In other words, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and for the most part, the average Tau would live a pretty comfortable life, unlike humans in this time period who live harsh lives of servitude to a crumbling empire. The Tau have 5 main castes, which each has a unique physiology that helps them perform the tasks that they are born to do. There's an air caste, which deals with aircraft and spacecraft. There's a water caste that behaves as diplomats and traders. There's an earth caste, who are engineers and laborers. And, of course, the fire caste, who are the bulk of the military forces, which is what most of the miniatures in 40k in the game are. But there's also an ethereal caste, which are also in the game and act as leaders and advisors for all of the other Tau castes. The Tau have also invited many alien races into their empire in the name of the greater good as well. There have even been humans that have joined the Tau Empire, since they seem to be able to give these humans a better life than the autocratic Imperium of man can provide. But that's the catch with the Tau. If you don't wish to join the greater good, then they have to break out their advanced weapons and technology and kick your ass. Or even just wipe out your entire race for standing in the way of the greater good. So it's join us or die. No honor in that, if you ask me. Wiping out entire worlds in the name of the greater good? Sure. Whatever you gotta tell yourself to get to sleep at night. This leads us back to the Imperium of mankind. With all of these alien threats, humanity is still the most populous race in the galaxy. This is by no accident. The Imperium of Man constitutes more than half of the official factions you get to choose from when playing the game. They have many different military forces, each as an answer to any foe that they may face. I'm going to attempt to cover these quickly in relationship to the subject matter we've already covered. Space Marines. One of the major reasons that humanity is the most populous race in the galaxy is because 10,000 years prior to the time period 40k takes place in, the Emperor of Mankind genetically engineered 20 perfect soldiers, which he called the Primarchs. Sadly, the gods of chaos worked their magic and found a way to wisp the 20 embryos that were to become the Primarchs away from the Emperor and scatter them throughout the galaxy. Even without his Primarchs, the Emperor still had centuries of research to go off of. He used these 20 genetic templates to create legions of genetically enhanced humans called the Space Marines. They are given the best armor and equipment available, not to mention all their awesome genetic enhancements. These enhancements include things like a third lung, so that they can breathe poison atmospheres, a solid rib cage that consists of one bone plate to make it hard to stab them in the heart. They have a gland that filters out poisons that they eat and allows them to spit the toxins out later in their enemy's face. Cool. They also digest everything they eat, so there's no need to ever take a bathroom break. There are a whole bunch more enhancements, but it would take a while to cover it all, and I'm sure you don't have time for that, and neither do I. So we'll leave it at badass 8-foot-tall superhuman warriors wearing impenetrable armor and carrying a submachine gun each. Sweet! There was a period known as the Great Crusade, where after the Emperor united all of Earth under his empire, he attempted to conquer the entire galaxy, with the Space Marines as his unstoppable army. Luckily for the Emperor, most of the galaxy was populated with humans thousands of years before the time of the Crusades. That ancient period is referred to as the Dark Age of technology. But back to the Crusades, it was the Emperor's goal to reunite all of the human worlds under one galactic empire. During this crusade, he would also recover all of his Primarchs on the various worlds throughout the galaxy, most of those Primarchs having risen to a level of importance or leadership on the world that they found themselves forced to grow up on, due to, of course, their superhuman abilities. After most of the human worlds had been reclaimed by the Emperor and his Space Marine legions, the Emperor trusted the final stages of expansion to his favored Primarch, Horus Lupercal. This would turn out to be a massive mistake, because the Emperor handed 100% control of all the military forces of the Imperium to Horus, so that he may act in the Emperor's stead, while the Emperor went back to Earth to rule his new Imperium. What he didn't know is that Horus had joined forces with the gods of chaos, and as a result, a full half of the Space Marine legions sided with Horus and rebelled against the Emperor and his Imperium. This conflict was known as the Horus Heresy, and finally ended when the traitor forces of Horus made a final assault on Terra, which is the name of Earth in this future. The resulting final battle between the Emperor and the demonically enhanced Horus resulted in the Emperor defeating Horus, but becoming mortally wounded in the process. The Emperor was then brought back to Earth by one of the Primarchs named Rogel Dorn and placed on his golden throne, which is a form of life support device, which is how he has basically maintained a coma for the past 10,000 years. The traitor forces that sided with Horus would then flee from the Imperium over the years to follow the heresy, to an area of space where the warp and real space overlap. This region is known as the Eye of Terror, and is the easiest place for demons to come into real space. The traitors that now reside there have become corrupted by the gods of chaos and their demons over the millennia, and are now twisted reflections of the noble imperial warriors they once were. These are the Chaos Space Marines, and are possibly the Imperium's worst enemy. The Astra Militarum. The Astra Militarum, also known as the Imperial Guard, represents the bulk of the forces of the Imperium of Man. They are basically the Imperial Army. In fact, in older editions of the game, they were even called such. Their ranks are made up of normal people like you and I. Now, They may be a little tougher, having grown up on harsh Imperial worlds, but they're not genetically enhanced, nor do they have the most advanced weapons or armor like the Space Marines do. They're basically just humans who have been conscripted to help defend their worlds from external threats, like the Orcs, Tyranids, Chaos, the Eldari, and all the other ones we've talked about. The good and bad part about the Imperium of Man is that there are trillions upon trillions of humans all over the galaxy. So when it comes to waging war on the enemies of the Imperium, human lives are in no short supply. The soldiers of the Astra Militarum are lucky if they are given even a suit of leather armor, not to mention any kind of actual armor plating, or even a helmet for that matter. Every soldier is given a lasgun and a knife to use as weapons. A lasgun, if you can't tell from the word itself, much like cockapoo, which is a cocker spaniel and a poodle, a lasgun is a laser gun. These weapons are incredibly cheap to manufacture in the far future, and so are given out en masse and are not that big of a deal if they lose a few, because they really weren't that expensive to start with. Much like the humans that carry said lasguns, they're cheap and not that big of a deal if we lose a few, so long as the corrupt autocracy of the Imperium is allowed to flourish. Can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. The lucky part for most soldiers of the Astra Militarum is that they're usually accompanied by convoys of tanks and artillery. Quite often, the average soldier may not even have to fight the enemy. They simply just blow their opponents away with absolute insane amounts of bombs and shells. The Adept Mechanicus. Most of these tanks and artillery, as well as the advanced power armor and guns used by the Space Marines, and pretty much every other machine in the entirety of the Imperium of Mankind, is manufactured and maintained by a religious cult that worships machines known as the Adept Mechanicus. Before the Emperor united all of Terra under his Imperium, the tribal societies of Earth had no communication with Mars, and vice versa. This allowed an entire society of people on Mars to incorporate technology into their everyday life. So much so that they replace much of their bodies with robotic limbs and cybernetic implants. They believe that every machine has a spirit that must be appeased in order for that machine to maintain the ability to operate. So long as the machine spirit, as they call it, is pleased, then the machine should be in working order. The problem with this misplaced belief in machines having spirits means that there is next to no technological innovation within the Imperium. In fact, any innovation that does take place is usually seen as heresy against the machine god and is usually punished with death or even the destruction of your entire world. You know, just in case. The Ecclesiarchy and the Adepta Sororitas. The Ecclesiarchy is the actual official religion of the Imperium of Man, where the Emperor is seen as a god. The only other religion allowed to be practiced is the previously mentioned cult Mechanicus. The Ecclesiarchy just kind of looks the other way when it comes to the Mechanicus, because without them, the galaxy would just simply not be able to function without technology. To properly describe the Ecclesiarchy, picture, if you will, an organization of fanatical Catholic monks that tattoo their prayers onto their skin and cause themselves pain in order to repent for their blasphemies. Basically, what the church was in the Middle Ages. Fanatical, prejudiced, and willing to punish anyone whose beliefs differ from their own by burning them alive. Ironically, the Emperor never wanted to be worshipped as a god. He, in fact, wished to stomp out all religions during his Great Crusade in order to let logic and science guide humanity. This was the only way he could see a bright future for humanity. The catch is that it's because of the Ecclesiarchy that the Imperium even holds together at all. It is the belief that their god emperor will protect them that gives people enough strength to face the horrors that the galaxy presents. The Ecclesiarchy seeks to maintain control of the Imperium with religious oppression, much like the aforementioned Catholic Church during the Dark Ages, and as a result, humanity for the most part lives in slavery or squalor, with the average person living a very arduous and difficult life as a servant of the Imperium. But at least, the Imperium stays together and is united under the banner of the God Emperor, right? Any psychers or cults that happen to show their face in the light of day are usually met with a swift death by the Ecclesiarchy. Once again, to show the true hypocrisy of the situation, they require a certain form of psyker, known as a navigator, in order to travel through the warp, as mentioned at the beginning of this video. They also require them to communicate across long distances, since a psychic signal can be sent across the galaxy in an instant, which is a lot faster than anyone can travel, even using warp travel. Psychers still pose a threat in that they can be a doorway that a demon can use to enter the physical universe, and so most psychers, other than the ones that are useful to them, are burned as witches by the priests of the Ecclesiarchy. The Ecclesiarchy is expressly forbidden from becoming militant. More specifically, they are forbidden from assembling men at arms. This is the result of a conflict in the galaxy's past, where the leader of the Ecclesiarchy almost overthrew the entire Imperium. Therefore, they are no longer allowed to assemble men at arms. So in the true fashion of a religious organization, they found a loophole. The militant arm of the Ecclesiarchy is known as the Adepta Sororitas, or the Sisters of Battle. So basically, since they're not allowed to gather men at arms, their armies are instead composed of women at arms. These women are devout followers of the Imperial Creed, which is the belief that the Emperor is their Lord and Savior. They firmly believe that the Emperor is a god, and they believe that it is their job to rid the galaxy of aliens, mutants, psychers, and any other entity that may contradict the perfection that is the human race. These sisters are not genetically enhanced like the Space Marines, and are still technically basic humans. They are, however, armed as well as the Space Marines, wearing smaller versions of the same power armor that the Marines wear, as well as carrying the same advanced weapons and utilizing the same armored vehicles that the Space Marines make use of. Picture these warrior women as crazed nuns with guns. They are the most badass chicks the Imperium can muster, and they do a great job at wiping out any adversary that may affront them. The Inquisition. The Inquisition is exactly what you think it is. It consists of multiple orders of religious fanatics that are basically the law when it comes to what is and isn't considered heresy against the God Emperor of mankind. These individuals travel the galaxy operating above the law and answer to none of the organizations that govern the Imperium, since even the Council of High Lords that rules the Imperium from Terra are able to be corrupted. It is the job of the Inquisitor to seek out corruption and heresy and wipe it out by any means necessary, even if it means killing everyone on a planet so that the heresy will not spread to other worlds. The problem with this is that since they answer to no one but the Emperor, and the Emperor can't even speak, that this has led to there being many differing opinions as to what is heresy and what isn't. Some Inquisitors, known as the Ordo Hereticus, or the Witch Hunters, are big on wiping out psychers, since they see them as an easy portal for demons. There are also those that are focused on hunting demons, specifically known as the Ordo Malleus. These Inquisitors are even more hypocritical than the others, since many of them make use of captured demons and demonic weapons in order to sort of fight fire with fire and use demonic powers to fight off demons. Yeah, that's not hypocritical at all. There is also an Ordo Xenos, which you can likely tell from the subject matter we've already covered in this video that these are the ones who hunt aliens. It is their job to prevent humans from falling under the influence of aliens and/or alien technologies. They see humanity as perfect, and all alien life forms are abominable horrors that must be exterminated. So that's pretty much all I got for you guys. I realize this was a very brief overview, but as you can tell, even just skimming the surface has made for a rather long video, hasn't it? The reality is, I barely scratch the surface when it comes to the depth of the lore that surrounds this game. Not only has it been 30 years of development, but there's been so many authors and contributors to this mythos that has become possibly the biggest fictional universe in existence. I hope this series has been a help to those that had very little understanding of the universe of Warhammer 40,000 prior to this series. I've attempted to put this in the simplest words I possibly could, but if there is any confusion or you have any further questions, please feel free to comment below. I always respond to all of our comments, so don't be a stranger. If you like this video, then make sure to hit that like button and share this video with others that you think need a basic explanation without getting too far into the details of this stuff. Also, as always, if you want to help support our content and help us make more videos like this one, you can pick up a t-shirt at our Spreadshirt page and/or check out our Patreon campaign and help us keep making awesome content. Both those are linked in the description below. I hope these videos have been a help to those who are having trouble trying to explain this stuff, to those they love and have no knowledge of the hobby or the fictional universe that supports it. Please let me know if this has been helpful or not. I love hearing from our viewers, and I look forward to seeing you at our next encounter.
Like a monkey in a rocket on his way back home. Okay.